And a very good morning to you at 4 minutes after 10. Listen, here's the thing. Come here a minute. We need to have a chat. We need to talk. I can't do this every day, nor can you. The Daily Mail can. They can be poking hatred at whoever it is. I told you on Monday, I can't believe it. Of all the predictions that I've shared with you in the last few years, every single one of which I think has come true. Smug? Moi? No. This is the one that shocked me the most. Not with the scale of the vindication, but with the speed of it. I just sensed at the end of last week and the beginning of this week that things were going so badly that the usual suspects were going to have to start wheeling out immigration again. And of course, it's not even immigration. Let's be absolutely clear about that. One of the ugliest things about this whole saga is the conflation of asylum seeking with immigration. I mean, many people are comfortable with both. Everybody should be comfortable with both up to a certain point. But now that we talk about refugees as if they were people just sort of coming here on a wing and a prayer in the hope of getting a house. Or I think, did Sheila have a caller yesterday just as I was leaving the office claiming that they all come here because they think they're going to get a house? I thought I'd woken up in 1984. No, that's a bad example because everyone thinks of George Orwell. I thought I'd woken up in 1986. But no, when I started working here, and I first started getting sent those emails, this is before social media. Yeah, that's how old I am. That's how long I've been doing this. Someone said, Jeanette, thank you for the card marking my 20th anniversary. Is it really 20 years to the day since I did my first shifts? Oh, no, it could be, Anyway, I digress. When I first started getting sent these carefully constructed emails, like a precursor of your Uncle Keith's Facebook page these days, and it would be like an official-looking account of how if you were born in Pakistan, you could have a free shop on Luton High Street. And someone had gone to the trouble of writing this and making it look official. And then, of course, it gets sent around everywhere before social media, but in the early days of the internet when everything was done by email. And it would arrive in my inbox. And people were understandably cross with me for not being aware of this. And I used to reply, can you believe that? Can you believe how few listeners we had? Like I could reply to emails and say things like, I don't think this is real, or I've spoken to the council and this is complete hogwash. This simply isn't true. And then even now you get the memes going around about how old age pensioners get nothing and asylum seekers get everything. None of it's true, but it works. You see, it's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly seductive. And everything is in such a state at the moment. We're probably going to be looking at more austerity on the horizon. The country, huge swathes of the country are running on fumes. People can't afford their energy bills. They're choosing between heating and eating. We've got, ludicrous levels of self-imposed friction on our trading. We've brought back checks and red tape, and no one can tell the truth. It's a mad period in UK history. No one can tell the truth. No one in power. You still have idiots writing in the Daily Mail about the establishment scuppering their dreams of a new Jerusalem. The Daily Mail is anti-establishment. I remember when Farage started casting himself as being anti-establishment, and you sort of think these are the things that happen in banana republics. We shouldn't be letting this stuff happen here. But hey-ho, there he is, popping up again on Question Time, spewing his nonsense and bile, and it infects the bloodstream. It gets into the bloodstream. Someone sent me a BNP manifesto from I don't know, about 20 years ago. I might share it with you a little bit later in the programme. Someone sent me a British National Party manifesto from 2010. And I'll tell you this, and I'll tell you for nothing. You would struggle to tell the difference between what was written down on that piece of paper and the words that have come out of Suella Braverman's mouth over the last couple of weeks. So it's a grim period. Nobody can tell the truth. Things are going very, very badly. A lot of the things that are going badly are a direct consequence of listening to people who are now telling you to get cross about asylum seekers. So you listened to them about Brexit. Congratulations, you did this. A lot of this. Even the small boat situation would be a lot better if we hadn't left the European Union. It's not caused by it. The Dublin Agreement, under which we could return people to other countries, was a strong piece of legislation. But as with an awful lot of stuff that this country did in relation to such issues, it wasn't implemented much. The numbers were negligible. It's a powerful piece of legislation, but it wasn't used. when we were still in the European Union. It could have been, just as we could have had a lot more rules about who could come here and who couldn't, or about the financial thresholds or the employment status that you would need in order to be able to avail yourself of free movement. But nobody ever tells the truth. Nobody ever tells the truth about these things. It's incredible. And they can't. We're stuck in this weird, it's like a Mariana Trench of delusion. It's so deep. I don't know how we ever get out of it. Look, I'm one idiot on the radio. You can put me on in the morning and hear the truth. You can have me pointing out that the Daily Mail's front page today, 1 in 6 of us born overseas. Do you know who that includes? Should we run through it just off the top of our heads? OK, that includes the Prime Minister's parents. It includes the Home Secretary's parents. It includes the Foreign Secretary's mum. It includes the Chancellor of the Exchequer's wife. It includes Nigel Farage's last wife. It includes Boris Johnson himself. It includes the owner of the Times and the owner of the Sun. The owner of the Daily Mail, I think, was born in this country, but he achieves non-dom status by dint of his father adopting a non-dom status. So he is technically not British for tax purposes. I could go on. How many other people do you need to be reminded were not born here? Mo Farah? I don't know. I mean, 1 in 6 of us born overseas. Why are you going to get cross about that? I don't know, James. Because they're telling me to. And that's where my thoughts went today. I don't know if this is appropriate. I genuinely don't. And I don't want to upset anybody. Nice. I am obviously very much in the business of upsetting nasty people. But I don't want to upset anyone who doesn't deserve it. But I do find myself thinking today about people who aren't nasty by nature, but who fall for this. The people who the Daily Mail is thinking of today. Your mum, perhaps, or your dad. Your nan or your Uncle Bob. The people the Daily Mail is thinking of today, whose lives are all right, okay? Things are far from perfect, but we're bumbling along quite nicely. And the Daily Mail and Nigel Farage and all the usual suspects, they don't want them to be peaceful and happy. They want them to be hate-filled and angry. They want them to be frightened and cross, because that's how they get money, that's how they get attention, and that's how they get votes. Now, I don't have anybody like that in my life. More, I suspect, through luck than judgment. Before my late father passed away 10 years ago, he was just beginning to absorb some of the Daily Mail's rhetoric. He was just beginning, because Mum would get it for the TV guide, and they'd take the Times, but only on the days when he could bother to walk to the newsagents. The Mail was always in the house, and it's just beginning to mention some of the things about, because he was a pensioner, and you know the idea that people like him weren't being looked after, and people who were less deserving were being looked after. My dad was a very intelligent man, and I'm sure that he would have given his head a wobble and come out of the cave, as it were, and we had some heated but respectful conversations about it. But that's the closest I've ever come. The closest I've ever come to having someone in my life who chooses to believe this bile, who reads the front page of today's Daily Mail, 1 in 6 of us born overseas, and doesn't think of the Prime Minister's parents, or the Home Secretary's parents, or the Chancellor of the Exchequer's wife, or the Foreign Secretary's mum, or the last Prime Minister but one, who was, of course, born in the States and comes from Turkish heritage. I speak of Boris Johnson. I think they changed the family name in order to camouflage the what he would probably call the exotic roots. And I do feel immensely sorry for them, or for you, or for whoever it is that we're talking about. My friend Gary put up a clip yesterday from years ago. Sometimes in the office it's a little bit weird, because we have a screen that tracks the activity and the business being done on the LBC website, and then something comes out of nowhere. One of my colleagues said, have you just tweeted that EDL thing? And it was Gary who tweeted, just dug it out of the archive because of the direction of traffic on the programme this week and in the news this week. A bloke who rang in and described his journey from being an EDL knuckle dragger, and I use that phrase advisedly. It's not a permanent state of affairs. It is fixable. It is something that can be improved upon. But he went from being an EDL knuckle dragger to being much happier, much more informed, much better informed. He was kind enough to credit this programme with having been the catalyst for that process. And I do think about people like that on days like today, because I don't know what it would be like. You see, I have this weird perspective I only know the people who profit from it, you see. My background is in newspapers. I've been doing this job now for a long time. So I know the people who profit from it. I even had to work for a while with a woman who described people in the channel as cockroaches. I watch the people who profit from it. They don't give a fig about you. They couldn't care less about what's happening in Dover. All they know is that their business gets an almighty boost every time they encourage you to start hating on the 1 in 6 of us who were born overseas, or thumping their drums about the wisdom of deporting refugees to Rwanda. They don't even put in the effort to understand the issues. They don't know that we're currently around about 19th in Europe in real terms for the amount of asylum applications that we process. They don't know that the numbers at the minute are nowhere near as high as they've been, well within living memory. They don't even understand that conscious decisions by successive governments have left the English Channel, the hazardous passage across the English Channel, as being the only route that the relatively small number of asylum seekers that we deal with in this country can take to get here. And why do they want to come here? Answer, there will be family or friends, or very simply an ability to speak English. If you had to start again somewhere and you were given the choice of 5 countries, one of which use the language you understand and can speak, which one would you choose? Go on, take a moment to think about it if that's a difficult question. You've got 5 countries to choose from, to start from scratch after your whole life has been blown to pieces. You've got 5 countries, 4 of them, no one will understand a word that you're saying. One of them, you could probably at least begin to get by. And in fact, 5 countries, one of them, your uncle lives there. The other 4, you don't know a soul. 5 countries, one of them, you've got family, you've got friends there. The other ones, you don't know a soul. You've got a bed to lie in. You know, there might even be a job for you if your application is successful. There blooming better be, because God knows. That's one of the main reasons you've made this journey, is to start earning some moolah. It's mad, right? So, what are these people cross about? 03456060973. Are they actually deep? I mean, would it just take a little turn of the dial for them to be furious about Suella Braverman's parents having been born overseas, or Dominic Raab's dad having been born overseas, or Boris Johnson having been born overseas, or Rishi Sunak's parents having been born overseas, or Jeremy Hunt's wife having been born overseas, or Nigel Farage's wife having been born overseas? Are they? I mean, why aren't they cross? Who are they cross about? What is this editorial idiocy designed to achieve? Why does it work? Why does it work? 03456060973. But the question I really want to ask, and the one late Duke of Edinburgh, of course, born in Corfu, Sid James of the Carry On films, born in South Africa, Cliff Richard, born in India, Spike Milligan, born in India, Joanna Lumley, born in India, thank you, Howard, in Llandudno. We could go on, of course, Freddie Mercury, born in Zanzibar. I want to know what it's like to love someone who falls for this stuff. 03456060973. And I want to know what we can do to help. This may be an entirely inappropriate approach to the topic. I don't know. And I'm already thinking, shouldn't we be more worried about the actual refugees, about the actual asylum seekers? But we don't know them. We can't get them on the phone. We can perhaps address the poison that's been poured into the ears of our country, and in many cases of our loved ones. And together we might just be able to come up with an antidote, some sort of antidote. And yesterday I shared 2 simple facts with you, both statistical, that should really explode almost all of the xenophobic rabble-rousing that goes on every time you turn on your telly or open up your newspaper. The proportion per capita that we process compared to other European countries is a pittance, a relative pittance, nowhere near the top 10, barely in the top 20. And the very simple measure of how many people are applying for asylum in this country, which is still much lower than it was 10 years ago or even 20 years ago. It goes up and down. I mean, we're high-ish at the moment, but nowhere near as high as we have been. And those simple statistics should soothe the most fevered brow. But you won't hear them in most coverage. You won't read it in most newspapers. You'll just be told that ordinary people hate foreigners just as much as hugely well-paid columnists and commentators do. It's another ugly thing that's emerged in the last few years. Ordinary people. There's a woman in the Telegraph called Alison Pearson. A couple of weeks ago, she was insisting that ordinary people love Liz Truss. And now she's insisting that ordinary people love Suella Braverman. Well, I'm quite happy to be extraordinary, if that's the case, because I judge people by their conduct, by the content of their character, by their actions, not by their origins. Because if I judged people by their origins, if I looked down on people because of where they came from, then I would have an enormous problem with half of the cabinet's parents at the moment, or their wives. And of course I don't, because I'm not racist. But maybe that's unfair. Maybe your Uncle Bob's not racist. Maybe your mum's not racist. So what exactly are they so cross about? And what's it like to love someone who falls for the anti-refugee violence, verbal violence, that has, as I predicted with a heavy heart on Monday, once again completely swamped our national conversation? It's 10:20. 23 minutes after 10. Jay in Manchester knows what we're talking about this morning. He writes, 5 hours after the Home Secretary stood up and spouted her misdirections in the Commons, my uncle's timeline had an image suggesting Enoch Powell was right, with all his mates chipping in to agree. How do I challenge this and not cause a family rift, James? I feel I must say something. I doubt he even knows what was in the Rivers of Blood speech. Well, I could tell you, if you are familiar with the Rivers of Blood speech, where it talks about the black man getting the whip hand over the white man, you can be fairly clear how Enoch Powell would feel about a brown woman being in the Home Office. But maybe your uncle can't quite get his head around that. And this is quite touching from Alison. It's hard, James, but my dad has been with us for a little over a week, and we have LBC on from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. He's actually beginning to question some of his long-held belief, which is an enormous relief to me and to his grandchildren. How do you do it? The people who are in the crosshairs of the Daily Mail this morning, with their 1 in 6 of us born overseas, and then the Daily Express even worse, going down that single name treatment after the utter debacle, the international humiliation of the Rwanda scheme. Suella Braverman is eyeing up 3 more countries to send migrants to. And before we get stuck into that, a quick question for you: is this real or not real? This is from Suella Braverman's constituency leaflets at the last election. Suella Braverman is proud to campaign on a number of issues that set her apart from all other politicians, namely the immigration invasion of our country, the threat to our security posed by Islamism, and the danger of the European Union to our sovereignty. Now, that's the British National Party from 2010. That's Nick Griffin there. Proud to campaign on a number of issues which set it apart from all other political parties, namely the immigration invasion of our country. BNP, Tory Home Secretary. Tory Home Secretary, BNP. The immigration invasion of our country, the threat to our security posed by Islamism, obviously the terror attack upon the processing centre in Dover earlier this week is thankfully the most recent example of terrorism, arguably race-based terrorism that we've seen in this country in some time, and the danger of the European Union to our sovereignty. The Tory party has turned into the British National Party, and because so much of our media is full of people who actually welcome that, although they haven't got the guts to say so out loud, most of us have barely noticed. John's in Stockton-on-Tees. John, what made you pick up the phone?
Good morning, James.
Hello, John.
It's something you said about your mum and your dad. And your mum would have the Daily Mail in the house for the TV guide. That's and right. That really struck me because I work in a supermarket, and by far and away our biggest seller in paper is the Daily Mail. Hugely. And the thing that people ask for most when things are late and deliveries are late is the TV guide. and the TV guide is really comprehensive. Yes. And it means you can buy a paper and go TV guide for a lot cheaper than buying the Radio Times, the TV Times, whatever. And it's mega because that means, like in my mother and father-in-law's house, they buy this paper for the TV guide, but then the paper's there. Yeah. It's almost like a Trojan horse. They've snuck it into people's houses. And I think it's when you said that, it really struck me because I thought, wow, that is exactly what it is. And then therefore they read all this stuff, they read all this bile, and then they repeat it. And it just, that's what struck me really. That's why I rang in.
What are the consequences? What are the symptoms of the bile entering the bloodstream?
Do you know, my mother-in-law, I love it a bit.
Of course you do. I want to make that clear. This is what this whole conversation is about. It's about people that we
100%.
love falling for this poison. It's horrible to watch.
Us, my wife and I, we couldn't both do the jobs that we do if it wasn't for the help that she gave. But the stuff that she spouts, and she'll say really quite awful things about small boats. And, you know, this is a woman who's a God-fearing Christian, goes to church every Sunday. And the stuff she comes out with, I'll challenge her sometimes and say, that's not really a very Christian thing to say, which causes a family row. Then my wife gives me the daggers, as in, shut up, just leave it alone. But I can't. And so I'll bite my tongue for so long, and then out it comes. She'll say, and then she'll start talking, my mother-in-law, about the left, or that's being woke. She has no idea what these things mean. And if I ask her, well, what do you mean by that? She can't answer me. And then that causes another row. So I really want to challenge...
What does she get out of it, do you think? Would she prefer to be less cross, or does she actually enjoy being cross? I appreciate your sensitivity on this, and I hope everyone can be similarly sensitive today. I just want to know what the hit is.
I'm not sure it's a hit. I think generally, my mother-in-law, I think she never wants to be disappointed, so she always sees the bad in certain situations, and therefore she'll never be disappointed because, you know, she's a hard-working woman who's worked all of her life, and she's got her pension. And, you know, I said to your producer, my mother and father-in-law, they're not wealthy by any means, but they do all right. You know, they don't struggle, they don't worry. But it's almost as though she fears the position, or that she fears the security that she's got because of this rubbish that's printed. And
they're coming to take away what you've got. That's the subtext here. And in fact, the word invasion is pretty clear. It's a word 100%. That means army or disease. You don't get invaded by Good Samaritans, do you? You don't get invaded by doctors or nurses or care home workers. You don't get invaded by Father Christmases. You get invaded by bad things. And so just as the BNP used that word in 2010, so Suella Braverman uses it very deliberately and very consciously in 2022. What would happen if you just managed to get it out of the house? How quickly? It would be amazing, wouldn't it, if someone has actually done an experiment, either on themselves or on a loved one. You just swap it for the times, or you just swap it out, or how quickly would they detoxify or de-radicalise?
I don't know the answer to that, but it's a really good point, because if I think back to in the earlier part of the pandemic when they were in lockdown, my mother and father-in-law were in isolation in their house, you know, for all the reasons of avoiding the disease, which meant my father-in-law couldn't go and get his paper. So what did I do? I set up a delivery, and I arranged for the Daily Mail to be delivered to his house.
You're a dealer. You're a dealer, John. You're a facilitator. You're the gateway, man. What have you done?
Crazy.
Well, what would have happened if you'd arranged for them to get the Times? If you'd said, it's lockdown, it's lockdown, Mum, they've only got the Times, they've run out of mails, you're going to have to get the Times every day. I wonder where they'd be now.
Oh, heaven forbid, the Guardian.
Oh, heaven forbid. Well, let's not get carried away. We can't go cold turkey, John. We can't go cold. You know, as you speak, it's so interesting how many people pop up in my inbox. It's really interesting, this, James, resonating with me. My parents also get the mail for the TV guide. My stepdad also reads the Telegraph every day, and they've both swallowed all this bile. It's awful, and as much as I've tried to challenge it, it's very deep set. That's from V in Norwich. I mean, it is actually uncanny how many people have responded. My parents do exactly the same thing, buy the Daily Mail just for the TV guide. The TV guide says, Will in Brighton, thing sounds crazy, but I've heard this many times from elderly family and friends now, and on it goes. But what happens if you can? Has anyone done that? Has anyone managed to get it out of the bloodstream? John, take care. Your love for your mother-in-law shines through every single thing you said. But of course, if you love somebody, was it Sting, I think? Set them free. Lottie Morley's here now with your headlines. 10:35 is the time. I mean, just for shorthand, and the rather splendid historian Dan Snow, who does some beautiful work actually on his history channel, has pointed out the King's dad and the Prime Minister's dad. Just you know, if you're going to go, he also says his own dad, my dad, the King's dad, the Prime Minister's dad. Also said the England football captain's dad, but I didn't know that about. It could be Leah Williamson maybe, but I didn't think that Harry Kane's old man was born overseas. Maybe I've misunderstood that, or maybe he was. I don't know. Or maybe he's talking about, or maybe Harry Kane isn't the captain anymore. Has there ever been a football World Cup that is approaching with so little excitement? It's quite. I'm hearing a call to Nick this morning talking about how we've almost reached the bit where they suspend Premiership games because so many people will be making their way to Qatar for the World Cup. I haven't got a wall chart. Has anyone got their Figurini Panini album yet? I haven't got my sticker album. I haven't got my wall chart. It's quite bizarre. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the people in the crosshairs. I said to you on Monday, and I wish I was wrong. That's what my next book's going to be called. I wish I was wrong. But when I said to you on Monday that I cannot see how we avoid another explosion in racist, bilious, xenophobic, anti-refugee rhetoric, because there is literally nothing else that would be able to distract the great British public from the skip fire of Conservative government, 12 years of Conservative government. And here they come. Here come the newspapers. Here comes the Daily Mail. 1 in 6 of us born overseas. Here comes the Daily Express. Suella eyes up 3 more countries to send migrants. It's all there. What did the Sun do, actually? The Sun is not as desperate as it used to be. No, there you go. The Sun's gone for a Strictly Come Dancing story. The Sun is nowhere near the bile duct that it used to be in its pomp. But the Daily Mail has moved into that space, just as the Conservative Party has moved into the space vacated. But he's born in Galway, was he? Harry Kane's dad? Was he born in Ireland? There you go. So the King's dad, the Prime Minister's dad, the England football captain's dad. They're all members of the 1 in 6 born overseas. But if you've got a loved one in the crosshairs, if you've got a loved one sucking up this bile, sucking up this poison, do they want help? I think they do. Someone reminds me of that study in America when Fox News viewers were sort of weaned off it for a month. I think they were paid as part of an experiment, and they would watch something else. And within a month, their views had started to change, and they believed fewer lies. I just imagine it's better for everybody, don't you? You want to live with someone who's consumed with rage and fury. And remember, the people that get paid for it, the pundits, the politicians, the broadcasters, the columnists, the politicians, they don't take this stuff home. They don't sit at home screaming at the telly. They're too busy enjoying the trappings of their lifestyle. And they talk about working class people or ordinary people. They're not thinking about you. They're using you for money and attention. It's horrible to watch, and I have obviously had a ringside seat for some years. Belita is in Swindon. Belita, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Belita.
Thanks for having me. So my dad is one of these people, and we moved from India about 15 years ago now.
Gosh.
So it's really surprising, when he started spewing all of this stuff. I'm like, we're immigrants. Hello.
What does he say?
He came here.
Yes.
Yeah. He keeps. I was like, regarding the immigrant crisis that's currently being spewed on
refugee crisis.
Refugee,
Crucial difference.
Refugee.
Yeah, no, it's easily done.
I mean, yes. Why are they coming here? Can't they go somewhere else? I'm like, you came here. Couldn't you have gone somewhere else? And it was the same when things were being said during Brexit, and he voted out.
Wow.
And that was shocking because, he came here for better opportunities. He came here for the betterment of our lives, right?
Mm.
So why isn't the same opportunity given for other people who are coming, who are escaping horrible things?
Yes, I mean a more urgent need, if you like, for sanctuary or for refuge. There is a danger, and I have fallen into this trap myself, of thinking that just because somebody has a history of familial immigration, then you must therefore have an incredibly relaxed attitude, an incredibly lax attitude to immigration. Now, that's political, and I don't think that's true. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, well, when we came over in the 60s or the 90s, or in your case, 15 years ago, the economic situation was different. I don't agree with this, but I don't think it's an unreasonable argument to say things were different and from how they are now, and therefore we need different rules and we need different measures in place than we did 15 years ago or 50 years ago. But when you move into the psychological rather than the political, when you move into the demonization of the refugee or of the immigrant, when you move into the rhetoric that is clearly designed to make people buying that newspaper think that there is something wrong with people born overseas, the use of the word invasion, that's not a political opinion, that's a psychological flex designed to enrage and upset people. So I am baffled by how someone like your dad could fall for it. He just removes himself entirely from the fear or the suspicion that they're talking about people like him.
Exactly. I think it's also selfishness, I guess, in a way, where it's like, oh, I've made it, down to whatever else.
Yes.
Right? And that, I think, is a lot of other people's opinion as well. Although they might not want to agree or even, say, yes, that is what it is, but it is. I mean, we've made it. It doesn't matter how anybody else does.
And so it's almost the internalized. After Brexit, one of the first things to emerge was an awful lot of people being told, I don't mean you, we don't mean you. I voted to get rid of the immigrants. Well, I'm an immigrant. Well, no, we don't mean you. This is like an internalized version of that. So they see the bile, they see the rhetoric, and they think, oh, no, they don't mean me. They mean, the ones over there in Farage's poster, or the ones over there in the processing centre, or the ones over there working in the local car wash. They don't mean me when they talk about this. That's probably going on a bit, is it?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I've also said to him, if you feel so strongly about this, maybe you should go back. But because it's just, what else can you say when somebody's spewing this about somebody else who doesn't have that, luxury to go back? He could easily go back.
Yeah. What does he say when you say that?
He doesn't have anything to say.
Stop being so silly. Go to your room.
Basically.
And just to steer it back to where we started, where would you say where is he getting his fix from?
I think it all started with the Brexit thing, to be fair, and then it's just because since then they've been demonized quite a bit, and it's gotten to the point where they're like, oh, they're going to come for your jobs, they're going to come for this. Well, they're not really.
No, of course they're not. I mean, any more than he did. And that's the point that you keep making. I'm glad you've kept your sense of humour. How frustrating. I give the Daily Mail a kicking because I have it in front of me every morning, but I suspect a lot more of this stuff is coming from Facebook and social media than it is from actual traditional newspapers. But of course, the more bilious social media becomes, the further they have to lurch to the right, the newspaper editors and columnists and broadcasters, tragically, the further, they even had to set up their new stations because they decided that, a media cesspit in which various horrors are routinely platformed wasn't right-wing enough, wasn't vile enough about refugees. So they've had to set up their own television stations in order to take things further. And, of course, the newspapers follow in their wake. It's coming up to 11:15. We'll stay with this for as long as we have to. I'll read you a quick text before we go to the junction. My wife is an immigrant, James, from a Commonwealth country. She's not white. We have a mixed-race son. Both of my parents are pro-Rwanda, pro-Brexit and anti-immigrant. My dad reads the Express and my mum reads the Mail. I've had the "oh, we don't mean you" speech whenever we challenge their views. We're lucky that we live 2 hours away, so we don't have to deal with the poison every week. But if we did, it would lead to an irreparable row. My wife doesn't enjoy going to visit, and I feel in a really difficult spot. If I don't go, I get told they never see their grandson. And if I do go, we get an undertone of feeling unwelcome because of the elephant in the room. I share clips from you with them, and they dismiss it all without watching as propaganda. It's heartbreaking what these people have done to my family, says Tim in Hatfield. A very neat distillation there of why we're having this conversation and why it's so important. These people who are laughing all the way to the bank, these people who turn off their microphones or file their copy, they never think about you again, ever. They just know that if they turn you against refugees, if they can make you angry about immigrants, if they can sell you the lies about the lap of luxury and our poor, we should look after our own, all of that nonsense just keeps their bank balances bubbling along nicely, bouncing up and down, gets them on the telly, gets them more work. And the minute they turn off the microphone, the minute they file their newspaper columns, the minute they leave the office at the end of the day, they don't spare a second thought for people like Tim having his family exposed to poisonous and potentially irreparable damage. It's 10:45. It's 10 to 11 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. A lot of love coming in for Tim, that text I read out just before the junction with a lot of resonance with a lot of people listening, and that is really why we're talking about. I don't think we've done it this way around before. The damage being done to your family by the racist bile of people like Nigel Farage and newspapers like the Daily Mail. Here's another one from Christian. I have the same discussions with my father-in-law about asylum seekers. I'm his IT help when he has computer issues. When I dialed in this morning to clear the bombardment of notifications he's receiving, it turned out that he has unknowingly allowed the likes of the Mail Online, the Express, the Sun, etc. to bombard his screen with anti-migrant notifications. Desktop notifications are the new TV guide, James. They go on these websites and they're prompted to allow notification pop-ups, which they think they have to do, and then they become absolutely bombarded with them. And there it is. The way, if you like, that it works. Here's another one from Colin. He said, but you believe Black Lives Matter, though, as some kind of drunk, unaware of the words they had just said comment from a very close family member in front of other family. When we were discussing migration, I, myself, and my family are migrants, James, but we are white. It's awful. Self-awareness has disappeared. And Ben makes a powerful point. The rhetoric around immigration is designed to distract from class issues. They aren't complaining about foreign millionaires and billionaires. Right now, they need to talk about anything else but the mess they have put us in. And that road, of course, leads right back to Brexit, which has not caused all of the problems that the country is facing, but it has made every single problem we have much worse than it needed to be. Tom Kerridge last night, the superstar chef, describing the damage done to his business and the hospitality sector. And I'll allow myself a brief moment of saying, well done, ITV, better late than never. We had Tom on, I think, 6 months ago, talking not just about the damage done to the hospitality sector, but latterly to the energy bills. He was one of the first canaries down the coal mine for the energy bills coming in as well, because he sent me a message about how they tried to renegotiate theirs and the company had come back with a 700% increase. 10:52 is the time. Anna is in Middlesbrough. Anna, what would you like to say?
So first, before I say it, firstly, I'd like to say that I do agree with probably 99% of your politics.
Of course.
But I do find sometimes that you're quite condescending.
I'm sure I am.
And think that people they can come to these conclusions just because, like, they read and hear things.
What else happens, do you think?
So I come from quite a low-class area, and it is an area where a lot of asylum seekers and refugees get put. My dad's a 70-odd-year-old ex-scaffolder. In fact, he was only finished scaffolding 67 years ago. A few years ago at 67. He was scaffolding up until the age of 67.
Yeah.
He's now on a pension. He can barely afford to eat or put his heating on, living hand to mouth. And we live in an area where it started off with one family, because it's a working class area, but it's a nice area in a working class area. So it's quite sought after accommodation. And they were from Syria. They were put there because they were chased out of another area. The people in where my dad lives welcomed this family. And actually, my dad stood guard on this house one night when some racists were trying to get at them. But since then, quite a lot of their extended families have been moved into the area. We've seen, like, my dad sees them, they've all got nice cars, nice clothes, mobile phones. And it does get my dad upset when he can barely afford to, get a week's shopping in.
Yes. And does he believe that they've been given their cars and their phones by the government or something like that?
Well, we do know that they do all get a hand up to get started. Now, they are grafters. I'm not taking anything away from them because I actually agree that we do need to help people. So they're working? But some of them are, yeah. The males in the family are. The women, obviously, they aren't allowed. Yeah.
So what exactly? So they're working. You said they're grafters, so they're working very hard, and they've got a nice car. What is your dad cross about?
No, it's not. It's because of the area we live, and it's like, obviously, whenever like any of the council houses has become available, it's been given to an asylum seeking family. Yeah. And obviously, I know people that work in the local
It would.
council, and we know
I think
that
it would be. It would be someone
they
who's.
get the
Okay.
furniture and everything provided. They do get a very big hand up to start.
Yes. They don't. They don't. Well, how big is it, Anna?
Well, they get the houses furnished. They do get provided cars and things like that.
They don't get provided with cars, Anna.
They have done.
They don't.
From what I've seen.
Okay, but the thing is now, I have to say, where did you hear that? And you say that I'm condescending because people believe this stuff independently of having been told it by people who aren't telling them the truth, you see. I don't want to be condescending, and I understand why you use that word, but where did you hear that the asylum seekers are given free cars?
I'm not saying all asylum seekers.
But where did you hear it?
I've got friends that work in the local council that work a part of these, and it's again.
What sorts of cars do they get?
I'm not. Well, I'm not. I don't know that precisely for every single one. I'm not. What I'm saying is.
Well, I heard what you're saying. Everyone can hear what you're saying, Anna.
What the area I live in, and it's always the asylum seekers are always put in lower class, underprivileged areas, and the reason people get annoyed, and whether it's right or wrong, well, it is wrong, but it's not because of necessarily that they're getting, it's because they're struggling as well.
What would your dad feel? What would they feel like if they were put in smarter areas than where you live, where your dad lives?
Well, our area wouldn't see them, would we? I mean, I'm not being funny, James. How many council estates have you lived on?
Well, 2, but a long time ago, and it doesn't really mean anything in the greater scheme of things because the daily.
It doesn't look like
let me tell you why. But Anna, the stories. Okay, the stories that. Okay, you carry on, and then I'll have a go.
But this is true, though, because I mean.
Is it as true as the free cars?
You know, you can take the mick out of that, or you.
I'm not taking the mick out of it because you'll call me condescending. You've believed something that's not true, Anna, and I don't know how I can help you. But let's focus on the housing bit, because if they were put in Mayfair or Belgravia, or if let's just say they were put in an area where your dad can't afford to live, then that would be the thing that they were getting cross about as well.
But
unless they actually object to the proximity.
No, it's not a case of the proximity.
What is it
when
then?
They can't get the houses that are available.
But who can't get? Your dad's got a house.
I'm on about this. I know that because there's people in the area.
Yes.
I'll take for instance then my sister recently. She was private renting. The renter wanted the house back. My sister was trying to get a house and she couldn't get a house for love nor money.
Yes. So where is she now?
Renting again. She's having to private rent again.
Well,
but she was, and she has.
She got a house then.
Children. Yeah, but eventually, and again.
What's the 99% of my politics you agree with, Anna? Just out of interest.
Because I'm not saying that we shouldn't be helping. What I'm saying is the reason people are getting angry.
They shouldn't. Well, I don't. But you're getting angry about free cars that don't exist, and about people being housed in the poorest parts of town. Whereas if they were being put. I'm not getting angry. I'm trying to explain why people are angry. But they're angry about things that aren't real.
But that is real, though, James. But you're saying that isn't real about the housing. It's true.
No, but your sister's got a house. And if they put them in areas, if they put them in smarter parts of, town,
but when people
then people would be even angrier.
I understand why they would get upset.
Of course I can. If they were homeless people who could afford to pay rent and couldn't get a house that was being given, and also I don't think asylum seekers get houses. You'd have to have had your application actually fully processed at that point, where you become an actual refugee. You are a successful applicant for asylum, and listen, I do understand.
Well, to say I disagree, because I know for a fact.
I do understand. Well, you knew for a fact they were getting free cars a minute ago. I mean, we can't keep going round in circles.
Right. Again, I didn't say. I said I've seen it and I've been told. I didn't say I knew for a fact.
And then when I say that that's not true, you call me condescending.
Actually, I said I find it quite condescending at times, James. I said I agree with what you.
I don't know how to help. You see, because people believe things that aren't true, that encourage them to harbour negative thoughts and feelings towards refugees, and when I point out that the things aren't true, you think I'm condescending. I don't know what to do with those 3 facts, Anna. I really don't. I've got no beef with you, and your dad sounds like a lovely bloke. He really does stand in guard outside the house, but the feelings of the people that wanted to attack the house are the feelings that you're describing.
But you've completely turned everything I've said
I
around.
haven't. I've just repeated it back to you.
No, you haven't at all. I'm saying the reason why people do get upset at times, and I've said that we do need help. It's not an easy answer, but this is really happening in a lot of working class.
But it isn't,
states
you see. The free cars, it's not really happening.
But you keep going back to that, and I've said,
because that's the most inflammatory thing that you said, and I think it was in a British National Party manifesto in 2011.
But I'm only saying from people.
It was a lie then, and it's a lie now.
In the council, okay, fair enough. Then we'll call that a lie. But when we come to a housing situation, that's not a lie.
Well, no, of course it's not a lie, but everybody needs somewhere to live, and if they were putting the people that we're talking about in
but can you?
You
but
can't
what I'm
keep.
saying is, this is why people get upset.
Yes, but they'd be even more upset if they were being put in smarter parts of town. This is why it's such a reductive argument. Is that they put the asylum seekers in the cheapest property available. Now, your argument is, but there are some people who were born here who want the cheapest property available as well. I've got no beef with that. But if they put them somewhere else,
not wanting it, not a case of I want that house. I need a house.
Yes,
I need
but if they put the asylum seekers or the refugees who are often fleeing torture and persecution and living on £5.83 a day, if they put them somewhere else, somewhere smarter, then people in the part of town you're talking about would be absolutely livid, and the Sun would have it on their front page. You remember the stories about the single mother from Syria with 8 children and a mansion in Maida Vale? So whatever happens, unless you give these people no help at all, whatever happens, what you're describing here is legit.
I'm not saying
no, you've got to let me
help.
finish one sentence, Anna.
You say you're not condescending.
No, I'm really not. I'm just asking you to let me finish one sentence because you can't hear what I'm saying if you're talking. Whatever they did, the feelings you're describing would still exist. There's nothing that can be done differently. If they put them somewhere more salubrious, more wealthy, then the anger would be greater. It would make the front pages of national newspapers. If they were denied housing whatsoever, where would they be? You'd have families sleeping on the streets. There's nothing that could be done better. Once you accept the need to help, the help can always be described in a way that will enrage people. And you've described it very well.
But I'm trying to say, yes, it does, but this is why it's starting, because there's not enough, people are crying out for help as well.
Yes, I'm not arguing with you, but whatever help.
Anything like that, but
yes.
So how, normal working class people, I'm not saying that they are right. I'm saying this is why.
I know you are, and I agree with you. And I've just explained, I hope, that whatever the help looked like, the people you're talking about would be successfully enraged. Whatever the help looked like. Any help at all, the people you're talking about would have the feelings you're describing.
But
that's all I've got. I'm 3 minutes late for the news.
Okay.
Whatever the help looked like. And we'll agree about the free cars. You can spread the word, yeah? And possibly even talk to the people at the council that told you. But it's good that you agree with 99% of my politics. 7 minutes after 11 is the time. So whatever the help looks like, some people are going to take umbrage. When you love those people, when you care for those people, and you know a lot of the stuff that they're being told isn't true, how do you walk that tightrope of not being condescending? Are the facts, is the truth condescending? How do you reach people who are very cross about the fact that, for example, 1 in 6 people in this country were born overseas, or asylum seekers get free cars? How do you break the spell? How do you lead them to the light? 0345 6060 973. And what's it like when you love someone? When you love someone who has fallen down these dark, dark holes? Andy's in Bridgewater. Andy, what would you like to say? Amy, good grief. I do apologise.
That's all right.
It's all right. It's my eyesight. What would you like to say,
You
Amy?
can call me what you like.
Like the last lady did me.
Luckily, it wasn't too loud, so
I won't call you that. I promise. Carry on.
It's like you've read my mind this morning. Honestly, I actually rang you because when you said, how can we help? I was hoping that you'd be able to help me. I'm exactly in this situation. I had the conversation with my partner this morning. I think I've spoken to you before about my parents, and they are, Guido Fawkes, GBBs, Daily Mail. They're getting worse. Over the last couple of years, they've got worse, more, and it feels like they're going more to the right. I have a wife, married, and I've always known that there's an undercurrent of homophobia, racism, all the rest of it. They kind of regurgitate Daily Mail stuff ad nauseum almost, and I'm really struggling now. I came off Twitter. I even stopped listening to you for a few days, but I had to come back. But it's affecting my mental health now, and I don't know how I can. I try and challenge respectfully, but my dad will use words like, that I've been radicalised, that our children are being brainwashed. But the homophobia now has skipped onto transphobia. My mum said,
does any of it
Strictly?
Does any of it? Tell me quickly about Strictly. Sorry.
Yeah, my mum, they always used to watch Strictly, and an advert for it popped up the other day, and I said, I mentioned something about it, and she said, we don't watch it anymore. It's all, the BBC have all gone woke. You've got to have same-sex couples. They've got to have people of a certain age, disabled people, different colours. It's just ridiculous.
That's awful for you. That just is awful for you because it's.
And
I think Alison Pearson again, oddly, the Daily Telegraph columnist, wrote a piece about Ellie Simmons being in Strictly in very strongly disapproving. I don't actually understand that. I watch Strictly. I quite enjoy it. I don't understand that attitude.
Well, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, had an accident about 8 years ago, broke his neck, and he's quadriplegic now.
Right.
So, they've got a gay, they've got a handicap. My daughter's autistic. So it's not like all of us are this Daily Mail, Guido Fawkes, perfect person.
And yet your mum and dad are clinging to a mythological image of them, their country, and by extension their family. What do they get in return?
I don't know. I think it's fear. I think fear underpins all of it. In addition, my dad's parents both came here after the war from Yugoslavia. So, I've got an Eastern European maiden name. My dad's name is purely Eastern European, and he was bullied at school for it.
Is that part of it, do you think? Is there a subconscious belief or hope that if you join with the bullies, then you won't get bullied again yourself?
Possibly. It's just horrible to live with because I love them dearly, and I think that's what prompted me to call you today.
I know, I can hear that in your voice.
It's just painful on a regular basis, watching a television programme a couple of days ago with a trans lady on there, and the oof, and the ooh, and oh my God, and you can see them trying not to say anything because they know damn well that I don't like it, and I'm going to give them something back, but it's just there all of the time, and I don't know how to reconcile it. I'm going to have to reconcile it in myself, I think. Yeah. But I don't know how to do that.
Well, they used to say when we were young that you should never talk about, I forget what the subjects were, politics and religion, and I think there was something else at the dinner table because, there's nothing new under the sun, is there? There's nothing new under the sun, and it's just the modes and the mediums that we receive information that changes. The nature of the information doesn't change. It's funny, I was talking at the top of the show about people believing 20 years ago when I started here that immigrants get given free shops and free businesses, and today we've heard from someone who thinks they get given free cars. It never changes. The lies never change. But the advice never to talk about it, actually, sometimes is probably worth taking, isn't it? Because what are you going to achieve by opening up these bile ducts?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. There isn't. I think.
How much time do they spend online? Is it they're at the computer quite a lot? Is that where?
Yeah, they're both retired, so they buy the Daily Mail. My dad will say, "Oh, I read all across all papers." In his world, he's got a balanced view, and it's absolutely right. And it's It'll be there's too many people here, that's why there's a problem with the NHS, or that,
But that's the other thing, isn't it, about yesterday's statistics? All of those countries that do a lot more per capita than we do with asylum seekers do not have anything like the problems that they have with public services and provision. So, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but every time something goes wrong in the NHS, there must be a little racist somewhere who celebrates, because he'll be able to blame it on the Brown family over the road, or the Eastern European family down around the corner, despite your dad not being able to join those dots together. A lot of love for you, Amy. Anna says, huge thanks and sympathy to Amy. This is also my lived experience with my parents. Please tell her she's not alone.
Oh, bless her.
It's not much consolation, but there is comfort in numbers, and it's the toxicity of it, it's the horror of it. Even Anna, the lady earlier, trying to sort of put the case for why it all matters, and people like me are condescending, and then at the end just being rude and nasty, because that's what's happening inside. It's a nastiness. It's a kind of carefully curated viciousness, and it's not normal. She was clearly not like that. It's what you turn into when you're told that you've believed lies, or you're told. It's like the doubling down effect, isn't it? So no one listening to this who reads the Daily Mail and falls for this stuff is going to be thinking at this point in the conversation, do you know what, maybe I should put it down for a couple of years. Maybe I should come off the laptop, come off the internet. We had a call, didn't we, ages ago? I forget the lad's name. I think it made my book. From someone whose wife told him to put his laptop away because he was on the laptop doing the sites. I think it was during the sort of pomp of the BNP and the EDL and all that. And we're heading back in that direction now, except it's actually the Tory party that's leading the charge, not the fringe far-right parties. That's something terrifying. But do you remember that call years ago when his wife said, if you don't put that laptop away, it's me or the laptop, was effectively... And he was laughing about it. He'd only put it away for about a month, and his whole life had changed. He said, I put it under the sofa. I think he said, did he say I put it under the sofa? And that was it. Because if someone's lying to you about anything from free cars to lives of Riley, laps of luxury, and you can somehow turn that lie down, it stops reaching your ear, then the rage you feel about the injustice that isn't real but you think is real, the rage must dissipate, it must decline, it must dilute. Oh, I don't find this easy, by the way. I can tell in Amy's voice there's a burden being carried, and I don't even deal with it in my own circle, in my own family. I just become a mouthpiece, a vessel, a channel through which we examine other people's miseries and unhappinesses. And that, I thought that really interesting point, whatever help they get is going to be a problem, unless your own life is perfect, whatever help they get. And that's why very careful use of words like invasion is key. An invasion. So whatever they get, A, they don't deserve, and B, I will get cross about. I'm, in fact, so cross, I'm not even going to bother to check whether or not it's true. 20 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we continue to examine or investigate the question of what do you do? What do you do if someone you love believes the lies? And now, the problem with people describing legitimate concerns is that you have to ask what they are. And the legitimate concerns, it's very hard to phrase this sympathetically, the legitimate concerns, when they're true and real, they involve refugees or asylum seekers getting any help at all. So, any housing, any home, why are they getting that? And I mean, they are simultaneously legitimate concerns and unhelpful or illegitimate concerns. What's the alternative? So we don't get any home at all? I'll tell you why people are upset, James. It's because these refugees are getting stuff. So when would you be happy? Well, when they're not getting any stuff at all. Do you see what I mean? It's so reductivist, and yet it is very hard to talk about these issues, to properly address these issues. Thank you to Steve, who's found the bit from my book that I was talking about. It was a chap called Ray. And this is 4 or 5 years ago I wrote this. He says, I was just listening to what you said about the internet melting our brains, and I wanted to tell you what happened to me. And I say, go on, Ray. Ray says, I didn't really know any Muslims, but I started reading stuff online a few months ago about the EDL and that. And the more I read, the angrier I got. Angry about these people pouncing off us while plotting to kill us, James. I know, but they'd back it up by quoting from the Quran or the Hadiths and kind of prove all their points about Muslims without ever actually talking to any. And then I said, so what happened? And Ray said, my wife told me to stop. I was getting angry with her, angry with the family. I was getting angry with everyone, really. I'd started trying to convince everyone that we were under siege and they just couldn't see it. The wife said I was making myself ill and making her unhappy, and she told me to leave the laptop under the sofa for a month. And I said, what happened, Ray? And he said, I was sorted in less than a week, James. I never look at that stuff anymore and I couldn't be happier. Ah, man, thank you, Steve, for digging that one out from what looks like a Kindle version of my first book, How to Be Right. And it matters. I mean, you can. Oh, boy. Rob's in Maidstone. Rob, what would you like to say?
Oh, morning, James. Well, before I say anything, I have to acknowledge that I'm part of the tofu-eating, Guardian reading, wokerati.
Wokerati. You know, I don't really read The Guardian, believe it or not. And I only recently discovered the delights of tofu in a laksa, in a sort of Malaysian street food. But the rest of it, yeah, I've even got the T-shirt. I've got the T-shirt.
Yeah, James, it was because you know the problem with all of this is that we've got to a point where we blame everything on the other. So all the failures of the last 12 years get blamed on people getting stuff that they don't deserve. Now, my family have always been more to the right than me. And initially, I used to try and call it out when they put stuff on Facebook. And if we had a family dinner, I would hold my corner. But the only thing that made a difference is when my stepdad sent me an email that one of his friends had sent him about Sharia law in Birmingham and the hijab being a thing against women's rights.
Gosh.
And then I could actually say to him, do you realise that that's racist? Because my family come from the deep, dark southwest.
Right.
I mean, they aren't swamped with immigrants and all of these things that they read about in the Daily Mail, but they think it's going on somewhere else. And it's incredible. But when I could point out to him that he said, but it's a website. It's a proper website. Look, and he sent me the link. And I went on the link, and of course it was one of those that looks like news. And it looked enough like what he read in the Daily Mail for him to make the connection that these things were true. Because it looked like it had been written by a proper journalist, and it looked like it was well researched.
I remember when this first started crossing my desk, and I couldn't quite believe it because you can't quite imagine the existence of someone. If they've got a strong case, then make it. But if you're building your case on lies and you're making your lies look as plausible as possible, then you're doing something that normal people can't quite understand. But all racism is lies, and all racists are liars. It's inevitable.
So what I did, and not everyone can do this, is because we've spoken before, I've been in a really bad place with my mental health, ended up homeless, went to treatment, got a housing association flat and all those things. And I use my experience to try and point out to them that without help, I would be dead.
Gosh.
Because my sisters believe that because I'm in a housing association flat, that all this furniture I have around me, I was given. Well, no, I got some of it from a charity shop and I got some of it from a charity, and I've used some of my benefits to buy a second-hand this and a second-hand that.
Yes.
But when I spoke to my mum, she went, well, I can now leave everything to the grandchildren because all my kids are set up. I went, I live on benefits, which aren't a lot. It isn't disposable income because my sister believes that your benefits are disposable income.
We've spoken about your sister before.
Yeah.
Has she not budged an inch?
We haven't spoken for a year and a half now.
And there it is. And I mean, dare I ask what her views are on some of the other issues that we've touched on today?
That these immigrants are swamping us, that they're taking our jobs, there aren't any school places.
Let's imagine that was all true.
Yeah.
And then you look at the 18 other countries in Europe that take in percentage terms, take a bigger number of asylum applications. At which point does the government that's been in power for 12 years bear responsibility for perceived inadequacies in the public service? Services?
They don't, because they'll read the Mail and they'll read Sarah Vine and they'll see something online, and then it's always about the other. And until you can say to them, well, I'm the other.
That's the point, and you'll never quite be the other. I know you try and you make the points about needing help and needing support, getting back on your feet and getting some help, but they'll never quite think you are the other, will they? That's we're back to the Niemöller poem almost, but you can't be the other. I don't mean you. I just mean them. 27 minutes after 11 is the time. A lot of Amy's out there, a lot of Robs out there, an awful lot of people whose own families are part of this hideous uptick. And the reason I don't... I think this week's been the worst I can remember. That's why I was trying to dig things from my memory banks, and that call we took from Ray and the one Gary dug out from the former EDL member who rang in to say that we'd effectively saved his life on this programme. And I think this week in some ways has been worse because I've been seeing it in national newspapers, what I used to only see on the hate sites or the Facebook pages, the stuff that would cross my desk. And he mentioned Sarah Vine, the use of the word invasion by Suella Braverman in 2010 when Nick Griffin used it in a British National Party manifesto. I'm pretty sure that an awful lot of people patting Suella Braverman on the back would have been publicly disgusted by Nick Griffin doing it. And I'm pretty sure they would have meant it, actually. I don't think they would have been lying. 12 years ago when he used invasion, it would have got a very different reaction, and it's been mainstreamed, you see. It's been put into the public discourse. 28 minutes after 11 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I even after all these years of doing this job, I'm sometimes surprised by the response, because we approach similar subjects obviously regularly, routinely. There was one in the news today about accents, which had me written all over it. You know how much I love conversations about accents. But this one, the question about what you do if someone you love